Hi guys, my name is Trevor Libano, sorry, and I am the marketing captain of the FTC team One Byte. I am here to teach you guys about how to create effective digital media and how to brand. So I have this presentation for you guys. This will give you guys a general idea of basically how to create digital media and how to brand. So to start with, what is branding? Branding is the promotion of a particular product or company by means of advertising and distinctive design. You can do this through colors, elements, and logos. It's basically how people recognize you. They recognize you through your branding. People recognize Coca-Cola because of their iconic font choice and how the color red also is a very important part of their branding, as it's very distinctive and it allows people to know what Coca-Cola is. So here's branding and how to create effective digital media. Branding provides a set identity, which is kind of what I talked about. We have our One Byte logo, which is iconic to us, and this is a very new logo. We made this before summer, about like a few weeks before. Actually, I think it was like the last few days before summer began. This was our final logo, and we chose this because it looked iconic and we liked the color scheme of it. Here is another logo. This is the work in progress logo. We use this logo to show different groupings because work in progress is under One Byte, because there's two teams under one organization, but one of us is kind of the varsity team, like One Byte, while the other is where we put the new people and those who don't necessarily have as much experience as us in the other team, so that they can have a learning experience. And they have their own logo, which is the work in progress logo as shown. So here's some iconic logos, and I just wanted to talk about what they have in common. And what I notice is that they are all very simple, they're very minimal, and except for maybe the Starbucks logo, all of it can be easily made. Like, McDonald's is just an arch, Google is just Google, but the colors are iconic. The Apple logo is just a bite taken out of an apple, but it's done very minimally. It's not very highly detailed, and that makes it easy. That's what makes it easy for people to remember, like the Nike swoosh. It's very iconic. So what I wanted to talk about is colors. We have These are our colors right here, and we have two blues and one yellow. This is a complementary color palette. Yellow is our accent color. It allows us to create emphasis when we're ever creating digital media. Color is very important, and I'm going to talk about why. We're going to talk about color theory. There's three things I'm going to talk about: contrast, color harmony, and symbolism. All of this refers to a color palette and how to make a brand distinct through their digital media and how they present themselves. So we have contrast, color harmony, and symbolism. First one is contrast. To think about this, when you're deciding colors for your own brand, we would like to see how they would work together, how they contrast together. So we put together 4 squares, and we're trying to figure out which color looks best with a red square. And there's like a black background, a white background, orange, and a kind of light bluish green. And in my opinion, the one that really looks distinct and stands out to me is the black and red, because of how they contrast and how the red looks more vibrant, more full of life. While with the orange kind of blends and it doesn't really fit as well as with black and red, which is coincidentally one of our school colors, black and red. Here is color harmony, and here's 2 ways to show it. I talked about how our color palette is complementary. as the yellow is relatively close to blue, but basically they are. It's just a distinct way to show how colors would fit. There's purple and orange. That's a common one to see. There's red and green. That's Christmas. And then there's analogous, which is when three colors are right next to each other. These are just simple ways to create a color palette through color harmony. And then we have symbolism. What do colors represent? When you think of black and white, you think of balance and calm, and you can see how these logos kind of represent. Yeah. Okay. Um. So these are other colors. We have green, which represents peace; blue, trust; um, purple, creative; red, excitement, bold; and orange, friendly; and yellow, more optimistic. And we need to take a quick break really quickly. Right now, I would like you guys to look at colors. There's a website called coolers.io, or yeah, .co, and that's a great way to find colors. I would suggest going through there and trying to find some colors.
I was angry before, but I circled the drain in my mind. I can't find, don't let the sun go down. Don't let the sun go down. Don't let the sun go. Music keeps me on alone. You got the feeling. The music keeps me singing. Music keeps me dancing.
Hi guys, I am back. Sorry about that break a little quick. We just had to get ourselves ready again. And we are at symbolism, and here I've shown an example. We have the UPS and a football team, which I don't know a lot about football, but this is just a team chosen. I should know, but I already forgot. This team is known for not having the best color palette, it's because of their use of brown and what it symbolizes, because it's a more natural element. It doesn't really fit with football. Um, oops. Now, we want to think about symbolism when we are looking at our colors and what blue specifically symbolizes. Blue symbolizes trust, as trust, strength, and dependable. And you can see all the companies down here that have that color. And we kind of chose this color because we thought it kind of relates to robotics. When you search robotics, there's a lot of blue that shows up. And that's kind of why I associate blue with engineering a lot. And that's kind of our choice behind the use of blue. Yellow as an accent color, just because we thought it would be very bold with the blue. Now we want to talk about inconsistencies in brandies. Now this is the same event, I think. Yes, this is the same event, and yet we have two posters that are very different in color and in how it's made. And individually, it's not bad. I think the second poster, it looks good, but when you look at the color, you can see the contrast with the yellow and some of these colors doesn't really fit, and you can also see how there's a lot of colors being used and inconsistency in style, as seen like there's kind of a highlight here. There's a few highlights that isn't seen throughout it, and it doesn't really fit the theme, and it isn't necessarily the best poster that I have created. Um, yeah, this is one that I made, and this was when I first joined FTC, which was 8 months ago. I was to make a poster really quickly. I didn't have long. I know I had like 20, maybe 30 minutes to make one, and we made two posters. I'm glad I made a second one, because if I didn't make the second one, I don't know. The first one just wasn't my favorite. Now, here's a good example of branding, in my opinion. This was for an event where we went to an elementary school, and we were kind of doing a robotics event similar to FTC. And so we had to create the participation, like the certificates, and we also had to create the poster and the banner. And all of these have distinct branding. They all have the same kind of color palette, and they all have a similar style to it that is very distinct to the event. And I think this is really good, in my opinion. I liked seeing other marketers make this, because I didn't make this myself. I was involved in the process, but I love to see all the marketers come together and create something that had a very nice branding, and that this is, in my opinion, effective digital media. Now, I want to talk about the 7 principles of design and how they're these are kind of like 7 rules you can use when designing a poster or any kind of digital media, especially like a portfolio, which is something they have to make in FTC. These are 7 rules that you can just find online anywhere. There's plenty of advice out there to make effective digital media. So here's the first one. The first of the 7 is emphasis. Basically what the focal point is. When you look at this painting over here, you are immediately drawn to the figure right here because of his colors. They're more vibrant than the rest of the piece. You can also see the line of action as their weapons are directly facing him, and so the line of action is directly leading you to that focal point, which is him. You can also look at this piece, this poster, as it looks to be, and how these bold lettering makes it stand out. And once you look at here, your eyes are immediately drawn down to the guitar, and then it's drawn down again to the text, which is a perfect way to use emphasis to draw the viewer's attention down. And these are all very well crafted. And there's this one, I want to use this to show the line of action and how it leads you to that focal point. Whenever you want to look at your digital media, I suggest closing your eyes and then opening it And once you look at your poster, what is the first thing you noticed? Then what did you notice second or third? And if it isn't something important, if it's something like the colors look off on this thing and your eyes are immediately drawn to it, you might want to change it. I would just close your eyes whenever you look at a poster. Now we can go back to these posters, and when you look at it, your eye, I don't actually know where your attention is going to on this one. It's kind of confusing. It can go anywhere. My eyes went here because of the contrast. It's like doesn't look as good, but it can go anywhere on this because it doesn't really lead your eye into it. That's emphasis. The second one is balance. Balance is a complicated one, even for me, but when you can ask, like, is it symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial? This is close to being symmetrical, but it's still asymmetrical, but you can see how it feels balanced, the piece. This doesn't feel asymmetrical, of course. This doesn't feel symmetrical. It's very unstable, and it gives off a different vibe to a poster if it isn't balanced or if it is. It's something I would just look into. It's kind of complicated to explain a principle like balance. Now, contrast we already went over. We can look at this poster and how the use of black contrasts perfectly with all these vibrant colors, and your eyes are immediately led to here because there's all this black, and then you see these very vibrant colors on the eyes. And from here, I tend to go up to this symbol because it also looks very vibrant, and then I go directly down to the name of the event, the show, and then I go back up. And actually, I have an example of contrast. This is a thing you can do. If you go to coolers, I would suggest using this if you want to find a color palette. And I have two examples right here. Just to give you a hint, this is the one that has poor contrast because I edited our colors and I made this palette right here. And you can tell, this is a very good rule if you want to look at contrast. I'd go to adjust palette right here, and I would go to saturation. I would desaturate it entirely until you just have it grayed. And you can already tell that these two colors, when grayed, it's the same color. And that's why they don't contrast well together. And this one is slightly off, but it's still not, it doesn't contrast. It doesn't have that same contrast. Black and white are a perfect example because black and white are literally the polar opposite, and they contrast very well. That's why a lot of pieces are just used with black and white. Now, if you look at our palette, on the other hand, you can see that there's more contrast. There's more, it's not as close together on the grayscale, and you can see more of it would just contrast better. That's just a simple thing. It's like a little cheat I would use. Here. Okay, the next one's repetition. This one's very easy. It's basically if people repeat something over and over again, you're more likely to remember it. It's just like if I keep on saying repetition makes you remember easier, repetition makes you remember easier, and if I keep on saying that, you guys are more likely to remember it. And these are two examples I chose. This is one of what looks to be kind of like a poster or a flyer, but it's in the shape of a square, so it could be like a post on Instagram or something. And it's of a pizza party, and as you can tell, there's a lot of pizza, so that's more likely to stick. And the Marilyn Monroe art piece by Andy Warhol is very iconic, and I think it's a good example of repetition, even though it shows more than repetition. I love that. I think Andy Warhol is a great artist. The next one is proportion. This shows how you emphasize things. This is an easy way to emphasize things. When you look at proportion, you can see how this word designed is made bigger than everything else, and this is where your eyes would immediately go to. This is the focal point when you look at this logo. And then you can see how this would be next. It's very big, and so it's very easy to see it because of its proportion size. Then this down here by cats and then load by the internet is more smaller because they're trying to emphasize which points they want to come across first. They want you to see the cat and designed before you see by cats and loved by the internet. Then there's this poster. As you can see, this kind of shows a small example of repetition as you see the bikers, but this is our it the proportions get smaller at a distance, and so this is more emphasized than say some of the bikers by here. And then you are also able to see the text because its proportion is bigger than most of these other bikers. Now you have movement, which is the sixth principle. This is basically kind of like the flow. So this is a good one. It's just like the flow of the piece. It helps lead your eye through it. You can see it as it leads your eye through it, through the movement of the piece, the flow. It's a very good way to for your eyes to be led through the piece. It's a good principle. And this relates to a lot of other principles as emphasis. There's another example of movement that we did where basically all the lines of actions are leading to a singular point. That's a good example of movement and how it relates to emphasis. Then there's negative space and white space. Negative space here this is a very good example, in my opinion, of Brave. As you can see, there's, I forget her name, it starts with an M, but they have her and the bear, and there's all this negative space that is used perfectly. I think this is a great principle, because if you have negative space, the poster will be more minimal. It'd be too crowded if there was no negative space or white space. It would it'd be too hard for the viewers to look at the piece if there's so much space being used, and you want a lot of negative space so that the readers can see it and it can visually lead them. Look at the Sherlock poster, and there's a lot of negative space being used. Also, I think these are very clever examples of negative space as they use it to kind of make a shape of a bear or a Sherlock. It's a very clever example. Now, here's some sources we would suggest to use for designing. Some of these do require payment, but for us, they are paid for by the school, such as Canva. It is free, but there is a premium option, and I personally prefer premium, but if you want to, free is still good and still a good use of your money, and I think it's a good use of your time, and it's a good way to start designing posters. And you can take these however you want. You don't have to use these exactly. These are just my suggestions and suggestions of other colleagues that they put in. Okay. Oops. Here's what we suggest. We suggest Canva. Canva is what we make a lot of things on. Canva is a very good way to create digital media. Here's some others. We use Google products a lot because it's easier for everyone to get on. You have to think about how you're going to get your teammates, the people who are in your team to access this stuff, and how you guys are going to be able to use it at the same time. And we believe Google is the best way because everyone has a Google account mostly. And then there's also Photoshop and Illustrator. I used Illustrator for creating the logo. Illustrator is great. I would suggest using both of those programs if you want to get a more advanced understanding. And there's also PowerPoint, and yeah. Here's Canva. Canva we use for posters, flyers, and presentations. It's easy. It's got a bunch of free templates that you can use. You don't even have to really create your own. You can just use a template and maybe you can edit it along the way. I would suggest doing that. It's a very easy way to do it. We also have all these elements which make for branding really good. You can see I use them over here. And if you want to make your branding consistent, I would suggest using elements consistently across your digital media to display consistency in your branding, and it's easier for people to remember. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening. I don't know how long this presentation was, but I can't imagine it was short because it was pretty long. Either way, thank you guys for listening and have fun.